Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Sungrand. I am Jerrel. I'm a game developer. I make commercial games, but I also make free homebrew games. So today I will be looking at the launch trailer for One Piece Odyssey for the Switch. This launched on the PlayStations, the Xboxes. I believe it's also on Steam. And in this video, I will not be analyzing this as a fan of the series. I don't actually know anything about One Piece. I've never seen it, I don't know anything about it, but I'll be looking at this trailer and I'll be sharing my analysis of the game itself, and I can see what they've done in order to optimize the game to get it to run on the Switch. And it's very interesting. I've seen some very interesting things that I'd like to share with you. So overall, I've seen significant performance considerations that have been made to simplify the game and make it playable on Switch. And to me, it is clear that the developers that are involved with porting this to the Switch have a very strong understanding of Switch hardware and the Switch software, and they also have a very strong understanding of the core game itself. So I would be shocked if the people that ported it were not part of the original development team, because they have a very strong understanding of the core product here. So I'll go through some timestamps now. So something I noticed is that the there's a lower internal rendering resolution, and you'll see this all throughout, which notice, like, say, for example, here you'll see that the resolution that it's rendering the actual internal graphics is lower. Also, there's compression. This video that they've uploaded is not a very high quality video, which is confusing why they uploaded such a low quality video. But you can see sort of the stair stepping in the pixels here. And that's, I'll explain a bit more on that all throughout the video as well. Something that I think is most interesting is to compare this to the higher resolution versions of the game. So I prepared a screenshot here. So it's cool. It looks really cool. I'll compare this to the high-res version of the game that is on PS5, PS4. Something I noticed, I believe that the characters can self shadow cast. They can cast shadows on themselves. You can see that here around Nami's leg and her torso. You can see Usopp's belt self shadow casting. And if we go back to the Switch version, you can see that they are no longer self shadow casting. That actually takes a huge load away from the processing. So that saves a lot of your processing budget. It makes it a lot easier for the game to render. Also, there is significantly less complexity when it comes to the lighting and the shadowing, or the shadow expression. So I noticed a fair bit of very interesting rim lighting. There's all kinds of processing when it comes to reflections. There's a bit of rim lighting. And it's so fantastic. This looks really fantastic. And that complexity is reduced. So this is the high resolution version. If you have a look at Luffy's face here, you can see, the folds in his fabric. And there's just a bit more sort of calculating the lighting from the environment. It's significantly simpler here. And the reason why they had to do that was because it saves on your rendering budget. It allows the game to run at a higher frame rate by reducing all of that graphical complexity. That's a very good call, because it doesn't negatively affect the end product by simplifying that rendering process, while the core visuals that you're trying to express are the same, so it doesn't suffer really. It was a very good call to do that. We can see here the clear sign of lower poly count on the geometry. Have a look at Usopp's pants here. It's a bit more rounded. You can still see some edges, but you can see it's a bit more rounded. And if we go back to the Switch version, you can see that there's a harsh angle there. If we have a look at the side of Nami's shoulder here, let's just compare that. You can see it's a bit smoother there. And again, it's not bad that they've done this. This was an excellent choice because they've done it in a way that is tasteful, and it doesn't negatively impact the end product. It's actually very positive. So it's great that they did that. Next on my notes, I have 8 seconds. I'm going to do a lot of pausing because I saw so many things that were just so interesting. This is such cool framing. Luffy's got his big punch attack, and he's got this big fist. And I find this interesting as a developer. When I see things like this, I try to figure out how they do this. So I would believe that his arms are actually just separate meshes or separate objects, and they could disable his normal sized arm, and then they can enable the large size one, because that's not the same geometry. I don't believe they would use the same geometry. It would be weird if they did. It'd be a weird decision for performance reasons anyway. And also there's all kinds of different expression that you need from his bigger when his limbs extend. It's just a fun quirk that I noticed here. It's not even blink if you miss it, but there's just sort of this artifact here of a black piece of geometry. I'm assuming you only see that for a split second. I believe it's because they have to compress the geometry, and then when it extends out, it's no longer black. It would just look like the rest of his body, but it probably looks like that because they've had to compress the geometry. I'm not entirely sure. If someone on the development team can explain that to me, I'm just interested in knowing. I'm not saying that's bad or anything. It's a fun quirk to notice those kinds of things. You can see as he stretches out the rest of his limb, you don't see that black portion anymore. So I believe that's because they basically have to mangle the geometry in order to compress it and get it into a small space. A frame later, it's totally gone. So it's just interesting to me. Also, you can see where the physics simulation starts and ends. So this part of his code is not physics simulated. This part is, and of course that's totally fine. They could have physics simulated that if they wanted to. There isn't a huge reason why, other than just to have a bit more fluidity. I would have to go back and see the high resolution or the HD version of the game to see if they do physics simulate more. If they've left that not physics simulated, it's just a performance consideration to try and keep performance up. So next on my notes is at 12 seconds. Let's see. And yes, at 12 seconds, this is where it's pretty noticeable that the game has lower resolution textures. You can see on Usopp's finger wraps, and on Kabuto you can see that it's a lower resolution, also lower polycount geometry. And again, this is not a bad thing. It's necessary in order to have this running well on the Switch. Those are good performance implications. Those are performance considerations. Something I really like here on 15 seconds, I'll just let it play at full speed, is the way the camera swings around and it's going in the opposite direction as the swords, which helps the swords feel more powerful. You can see, and he's winding up. Something I noticed with the animations in this trailer is the wind-up animations. I believe the animators here are highly experienced and likely have worked in 2D animation, because they understand this very strong sense of wind-up. I haven't seen many follow-through animations in this trailer. I just didn't notice them or didn't see them, but the wind-up animations are really well done, really expressive. Okay. I really like this build-up animation when Sanji is preparing his kick with his Diable Jambe. You can see he leans back just a little bit, and it's so subtle, but you see I think an inexperienced animator would not have done that. How he spends more time leaning back. So watch him lean back and he stalls there. I think an inexperienced animator would have just gone through the motions and then straight into the kick without building up this extra bit. But you can see he arches his back and he drags his leg back just a little bit more, so it looks like he can pull his leg forward using, this part of his body to leverage that. So extremely well done. I really appreciate details like that. Let's see. Oh, I noticed this. This would be so hard to animate. How his punch has to keep, moving through different angles. So if I was tasked with that, I wouldn't be that happy. You can see it angling around. It's such an interesting and complicated task. So I would not want to have to do that myself. Well done to the animators who came up with the solution for that. Something that, oh yes, this is something I really admire here. This is so great. It's such a small detail, but it shows that the use of particle effects is not to distract. It's not a visual distraction. The people that created the particle effects here really understand what they are doing. So you can see here the sort of that wind and aura that's around Luffy's legs. He's moving at full speed, but then they slow down, and then these particle effects run at full speed as he bursts with his punch while the particles on the ground slow down, so it builds, even though he's not moving, it does what, you know, the wind-up frames for Sanji did, where it builds a sense of power and it slows down, so it just, you know, makes you think visually, you see it, and so the audience thinks, oh, it's winding up for something, and then for these particles to suddenly burst out at full speed, it's so well done. It's extremely well directed, well implemented. These are how particle effects should be done. I recently reviewed, I didn't review, what a ridiculous thing to say. I did a video analyzing Dragon Ball Sparkling Coke Zero, or whatever it's called. And the particle effects were not used in this way. They were not well directed. They weren't used with any creative direction or any real intent or creative integrity. It's just they're very distracting. And there's no sense of power that comes from the particle effects in Dragon Ball Sparkling Coke Zero, whereas in this one, the particle effects are extremely well done. The artists absolutely understand what they are doing here. So that's the difference between developers who do understand what they're doing and developers who do not have an understanding of what they're doing. The developers here absolutely know what they're doing. So something at 22 here I think is pretty ridiculous is, where's it, 22 seconds? Using guns on Luffy is that, come on, that's not going to work. Everyone should know that by now. So it's pretty silly to use guns on Luffy there. Optimized depth of field at 27 seconds here is, this is the clear sign that they've reduced the rendering resolution of the depth of field. So depth of field blurs the background, it keeps the foreground in focus. It's very expensive on the Switch. It's so expensive on the Switch. And what they've done is they've reduced the resolution of that effect, and it's a very smart thing to do because many games don't do that. They're used by developers that don't know that is necessary to do. They don't understand that you can do it. So even though it's kind of jittery and it doesn't look that great, it's absolutely necessary. And the fact that they've done this, to me, tells me that they have a very strong understanding of the Switch. So this is great to see that. Well done on the developers here. You can see it, you know, kind of pixely in the background as it's blurred, but very well done on them. It's great work. So let's see here. I really like these big facial expressions at 38 seconds. Really fantastic. Just thinking about having to rig all that up and doing the blend shapes for that kind of makes me think that this is a ton of work. Extremely well done on the animators, because One Piece is all about big, expressive, you know, facial sort of posing, you know, and it really sells the characters. So that's really well done. I'll try and speed up here. And at 44, we have another example of the reduced resolution on the depth of field. You can see these are blurred due to depth of field, but then they're a little bit stair-steppy. So they've applied some form of anti-aliasing, however you want to say that. And it smooths that out a little bit, but, you know, it's not a huge deal. Again, it benefits the end product. So it's good that they've done that. And it shows that they understand that the stair-stepping is there, and by applying that anti-aliasing, AA, they do understand that that is a flaw of reducing the resolution of that effect. So at 47 seconds, it shows that the developers still understand what is visually important, and they've left the hat and this string on the hat, they've left the texture resolution very high because they know that there's going to be close-ups of Luffy. He's the big important guy, and shots like this, you know, they matter. So the fact that they've left that high resolution shows a very strong understanding of what the developers want to express, what the intent is. So these are very good decisions they're making. It shows that they put a lot of thought into the design decisions here. At 56 seconds, we have, this is such, I have so much respect for these design decisions here, that they would have lowered the resolution of real-time shadows because that is also quite expensive to render. You also have these projected cloud shadows. They're like blob shadows. They're not that expensive to render, really, but real-time shadows are what are more expensive. And the fact that they're so subtle, you know, they're not extremely dark, they're quite subtle. All the shading on all the characters is so subtle and understated, but that helps hide the fact that they would have lowered the resolution on that. So that's good decision making. I really respect that. So well done on that. And let's see here. I really appreciate the framing on this. the 10-ton hammer. Usopp is barely in the frame, so it makes him look even smaller. Well done. So great on the direction and the directors for that. That's so great. I really like the camera shake for the impact. And let's see. At 59, again, I don't actually know anything about One Piece. I've never watched it or read it, so I don't know. But I believe they have the X's on their arms because they are all pirates, and X marks the spot. So that's like a pirate thing. But I mean, you guys probably already know that, you know. So that's it, you know. Let's see here. This quote is wrong for Nico Robin. It actually should say, "I want to live," not "I'm going to live." So they got it wrong, but it's not like I'm gonna like nerd out and get angry over them, you know, getting lines wrong. It's not a big deal. Something I really like is this volumetric lighting. So I was waiting for a scene like this to see what sort of volumetric lighting. Volumetric lighting is a technique we use to simulate density in the atmosphere. We want to simulate moisture, particles, pollutants, whatever, you know. And it's so expensive on the Switch. Boy, howdy, it's so tough. You want your games to look really fantastic, and you have to make so many design considerations. You have this really nice light shaft coming through. You have this, you can see the moisture in the air. You know, that's the whole point of volumetric lighting. So the fact that they've got it looking this good, and it seems to be running well, I'm quite impressed with. So well done to them. You can, again, lower the rendering resolution of volumetric lighting, and because it's already quite soft and blurry, it's fine that you lower the resolution. Something I did notice is the bloom effect. That also has quite a performance cost on the Switch. And what you can do is lower the rendering resolution of bloom. That sort of creates that soft halo around bright objects or sources of light in the scene. It looks like it's running at pretty high resolution. I personally would have lowered the rendering resolution on the bloom effect a little bit more, because it actually would result in performance improvement, and it's not that noticeable when you reduce the resolution on that. So, this is really cool. This is Rukia from Bleach. If you'd like to check out my Bleach videos, I'm covering the gameplay trailers for Bleach, and I'm doing a game dev analysis. And here we have Rukia from Bleach makes a cameo. She's DLC, you have to buy it. But she is playable. She can join the party. She can use her Bankai. So it's really cool that Bleach, you know, lends a character to One Piece. So that's really neat. Hey guys, if you just give me a second here, it's me, Jerrel. I'm the one talking and doing the videos here. So what's up? So something I want to share with you is I make free homebrew games. I make them for older consoles. Right now I'm really focusing on the PS Vita. I recently launched a brand new game on the Nintendo Switch eShop called Clasher Ball. It's just a fun action puzzle game. I released the full version on the PS Vita for free for homebrew. So if you have a PS Vita, if you enjoy homebrew, go ahead and grab that. But the reason why I'm butting in the middle of this video here is I have a poll up that you can vote on right now. I'm creating fan games, and one of those fan games is a crossover with Clasher Ball, and I will be making a fan game that's Clasher Ball style of an anime. So you can vote on whether you want Dragon Ball, Bleach, One Piece, or My Hero Academia. If you check out the community page for my YouTube page, you can vote. If you want to vote for One Piece, I'll make 10 whole new levels based on whichever anime people vote for the most. So I'll be doing a fan game for that. It'll be absolutely free. You can play it on your web browser, on your computer, and I'll put it on the PS Vita as well, so everyone will be able to play it. I'll try and make it so you can play it on the phone as well. This is such an excellent use of particle effects. This is the right way to use particle effects. How Zoro's slash fills the screen like that. It just makes it feel so powerful, and it builds a sense of clutchness because it makes it feel like he just barely missed the camera. It's so great. So that's really, really great use of that. I really, really enjoy seeing things like that. It's just well thought out, well considered. 112. This is a shot that I really like. Again, there are so many moments in this that it's blink and you miss it. And as a player of this, you don't necessarily home in on these things, but subconsciously you do pick up on all this stuff. It does matter. Even if you do not actively look at it and understand it, your brain does bring it all in. You do comprehend it, and it does impact, you know, your whole experience of it. What I really love about this is this impact where Luffy lands his punch. He's probably clashing with Akainu or whoever he's fighting. And you can see that The scene seems to have slow motion a little bit, but the cloth simulation, the physics simulation on the clothes are running at real time. And it's such a cool visual. This is something that they do. I suppose you could say it's a form of sakuga when they do 2D animation, and they really emphasize, like the very fine, small details. It's a form of that, and I really appreciate that. It looks so dramatic and dynamic. It's not something that they do all the time, but it really sells the power and the impact of the actions of the characters. Really well considered, well directed. This is a performance consideration, is that the grass does not receive real-time lighting. If you have a look at the grass here, you can see that Doflamingo is casting a real-time shadow, but the grass is not received by that. Now, the reason why the developers have done that is because it makes the grass cheaper to render. It's cheaper on the rendering budget. If they don't have to receive shadows, it's just easier. So they impact the performance less. So it's not a big deal if they don't catch the shadows, I really, really like the physics simulation here. I really appreciate that on the goggle and the hat. Not only does it sell Usopp's reaction and movement, but it makes it feel like you can see this energy coming off of whatever threat this is over here. Sanji's hair is billowing in the wind, and you can even see Usopp's man purse sort of reacting. And it's such a great way to sell that whatever is over here is a threat, and it's emanating some sort of power. So that's very, very expressive. I quite like that. At 136, we have a pretty clear example, again, of reduced poly count for the geometry, as you can see on the rocks here. And again, it's necessary. It's handled well. It's handled tastefully. It's lower resolution rocks in terms of the textures and the poly count. But again, it does not really negatively impact the end product. It is a performance consideration, and these things have to be done. So if I could quote Doctor Strange, it was the only way. Is that it? Is that the quote? So at 140, something I really like here, such a small, again, blink and you miss it, such a small detail here, but you see this eye shine here quivering, and that expresses a sense of drama and that a character is getting teary-eyed. Such great art direction here. Again, that's something that developers manually have to implement. That's not something that occurs in 3D. You have this 3D environment with so much real-time visual effects going on. That is not something that can occur in 3D. That's something that is bespoke and handcrafted. So having small details like that shows me that the people working on this really understand the story, they understand the source material, they understand anime, they understand visual storytelling. So very well considered, well directed, well done. And finally, the last thing here I think is interesting, and something I wanted to point out. I believe that the game is likely using dynamic internal rendering resolution. I think Unity calls it frame pacing or something, where you see the game can actually lower its internal resolution if the frame rate starts dropping. I have a feeling that's happening because I've seen a number of spots in this trailer where it feels like the effects, like the outline effects, resolution gets lower. But again, that could have to do with the really bad compression quality on the YouTube video itself. So not a big deal, but something I want to point out is that you can see the game is actually rendering at a lower resolution, right? You can sort of see the pixels and the stair stepping on Sanji's leg. But this is so funny here. And you see the depth of field in the background where it's blurring the background. But this is something that's really funny. In game development and with games, it's really hard to get transparent geometry or transparent objects to behave and work well with the rest of the game. You can see these particle effects are transparent, and that means that whatever technique they're using for depth of field again blurs the background, it keeps the foreground in focus. The transparent particles, which are these particle effects, do not apply to that. So you can see them. And I think I have another example. Let me just find that. All right, here's the other example. Again, I'm not criticizing this. I'm not saying it's a flaw. I'm just pointing out, as a game developer, it's so hard to get transparent objects to play nice. They're always so problematic. You can see whatever object this here is a transparent object. but the depth of field is not being applied to it. So it's not being blurred, even though it's way in the background. And it should be blurred. And it's so hard. Game development is so difficult because so many different technical systems all clash with each other. And as the developer, you've got to find a way to make all these things work together. So I just thought this was something fun to point out. It's an issue I have as well. It's so hard to fight with. One of my games that I have on the Switch, there's a huge outdoor section. It's in the forest, and I've got water, you know, a little pond sitting there. And I tried to make the game in such a way to where you can't really see the pond from a distance, but if you stand in the right place, you have all this fog, you have depth of field, and then you can see like the water doesn't want to blur it. So, you know, that's just something funny. And one more thing I wanted to point out that I think is interesting as well that I accidentally skipped is I believe the developers can manually control the rendering resolution of the outline. So they're using some technique to draw the outlines on the characters. You can see a fair bit of stair-stepping on the character here, but the whole game resolution is not low. The whole resolution is higher than that. And how you can tell is if you look at these particle effects up here, you can see the pixels are very small. So there's a much higher pixel density. So I just thought that was interesting. Again, it's not a flaw. It's not a criticism. I think it's interesting and very good that the developers can control the rendering resolution of those outlines. And it tells me that they understand that there is a performance cost to these outlines. And who knows how expensive they are, but there is certainly a cost. In more, I'm not sure what technique they're using, but in olden times, you would actually have to draw the character model a second time in order to get those outlines, which can get very expensive, especially if multiple characters on screen. So the fact that they can reduce the resolution on that, very cool, well done. So that's all I've got time for today. That was pretty long, but there was so much content in this. I hope you enjoyed watching that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed that, please let me know. And if there are any games or game trailers you would like to request, put them in the comment section and I'll take a look. On screen you can see my 3 latest games that I've launched on the Nintendo eShop. Go ahead and feel free to look those up if you'd like. I'll put the link to my itch.io where I do have my free homebrew games across a couple different legacy platforms. And I really want to thank my Patreon supporters. You know, in between launching new games, it takes so much time to make these games, and there are months where sales are just slow because you don't have a new game to launch. So the Patreon supporters really help me pay the bills. They help me keep the lights on in the studio so I can making games for you guys. And that's why I make my free homebrew games. It's my way to thank you. Patreon supporters get cool perks like being able to play my development ROMs of games that I'm working on. And I'll be working on once a month. I'll be creating and launching royalty-free music packs, so you'll be able to use packs of music in your games, your short films, your YouTube videos. I'll be selling those on digital storefronts, but patrons will have free access to those. So I currently have 1 music pack up, and they'll have free access to all the music packs coming up. So thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Take care of yourselves.